Imagine standing at a door, heart racing, knowing that the moment it opens, life may never feel the same again. For Prince William and Princess Catherine, that very instant arrived in a way neither of them expected. Behind those heavy palace doors wasn't ceremony, nor protocol, nor duty. It was something so raw, so human, that it shook them to their very core. What they saw brought silence to the room, tears to their eyes, and a truth they would carry forever. But what was waiting for them? And why did this moment, more than any grand announcement or glittering event, become one of the most profound chapters of their royal journey? Before we uncover this deeply moving story, make sure you hit like, tap subscribe, and share this video with friends who love real stories of the royals as much as you do. Your support helps us bring more powerful moments like this to light. And trust me, you won't want to miss the way this one unfolds. The palace was unusually still that morning. Not the bustling kind of stillness filled with footsteps echoing through marble halls, but a quieter, almost reverent pause. Like the world itself was holding its breath, the kind of silence before a storm, or perhaps before a revelation. Prince William stood in the corridor, his hand grazing the carved wooden frame of the door before him. The centuries-old oak looked ordinary enough, but the weight behind it pressed heavy on his chest. How many doors had he opened in his life? Countless. But this one felt different. His knuckles hovered, frozen between knocking and turning the handle. Inside the nearby drawing room, Catherine's voice carried softly, steady but laced with nerves. She was speaking with a palace aide about the day's schedule, though her eyes kept flicking toward her husband. She could tell he was hesitating. William wasn't usually one to falter, especially not with something so simple as a door. Yet here he was, shoulders tense, the man who had faced the press, the army, and the world itself, staring at wood as though it might bite him back. What lay beyond wasn't duty, not ceremony, not a routine engagement. It was something far more personal, something they had both prepared for, yet neither could fully brace their hearts against. "Shall we?" Catherine asked gently, moving to stand beside him. Her hand slipped into his, and for a moment they were not prince and princess, not duke and duchess, not future king and queen. They were simply William and Kate, a husband and wife about to step into a moment that would redefine their story. The palace aide gave a subtle nod, retreating into the shadows. This was theirs alone. William took a breath, long and steady, then turned the handle. The door creaked open with a sound that seemed to echo through time. It was as though the very walls of Buckingham Palace leaned closer, curious to witness what their future would decide. Light spilled out first, warm, golden, almost too bright for William's eyes. He blinked, and then he saw it. His chest tightened. His lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. Catherine, standing just behind him, leaned forward, her gaze following his. In that instant, her composure crumbled. Her hand rose to her lips and her eyes filled with tears that threatened to spill. Because what they saw was not just a scene, it was a revelation. In that single heartbeat, they weren't royals navigating centuries of tradition. They weren't public figures bound by expectation. They were parents, children of a lost mother, humans faced with a truth that pierced deeper than any crown or title could reach. William reached instinctively for Catherine's hand again, squeezing it hard. It was the kind of squeeze that said, "Do you feel it too? Do you see what I see?" And she squeezed back, her tears answering the unspoken question. For the staff lingering in distant corridors, it was just another door opening. But for William and Kate, it was the threshold between duty and something profoundly more fragile. Family, love, legacy, and memory. The truth is, royal life is often painted in broad strokes. Public events, glittering gowns, ceremonial gestures. But behind those doors where cameras never reach, lie moments that strip everything back to the raw essence of being human. William had lived most of his life in the glare of flashing bulbs, yet nothing prepared him for the blinding clarity of what he saw in that room. And though he would later describe the moment with steady words, though Catherine would nod politely to reporters, and keep her composure in public here, in this private heartbeat. They both crumbled. Tears welled, their breathing hitched, and silence became the loudest sound of all. For William, it was as if his mother's presence lingered in the air. Diana, the Princess of Wales, had once told him to lead with his heart, to never lose sight of the humanity buried beneath the weight of the crown. As he stood frozen at that door, he felt her more strongly than he had in years, almost as if she had orchestrated this very moment. Catherine, too, felt a surge of memory. She thought of their children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, and wondered what this moment would mean for them. How history books might write of it, yes, but more importantly, how it would shape the kind of parents they could be. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. Their silence was its own language, heavy with awe, grief, love, and something else, resolve. The tears that welled in William's eyes weren't just sorrow, and the ones streaking Catherine's cheeks weren't only joy. They were both. They were everything all at once. Because sometimes life doesn't separate those emotions neatly. Sometimes it delivers them together, in one overwhelming rush. The door closed behind them with a soft thud, shutting out the world. Whatever had been waiting inside, they had now seen, and it had changed them. But what was it? What was so powerful that it moved the future King and Queen of England to tears? That is where the story turns. The room was bathed in morning light, but it wasn't the golden shine of chandeliers or the polished gleam of silverware. It was the softer kind, the sort that filters through high windows and makes even the grandest rooms feel human. At first, William struggled to breathe. His hand still gripped Catherine's as though she might drift away without him. Before them was something that neither protocol nor palace advisors could have prepared them for. Their 3 children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, had arranged a small tribute entirely on their own. On a low table stood framed photographs of Princess Diana, William's mother. Around it, the children had placed hand-drawn pictures, scribbled notes in clumsy handwriting, and flowers they'd picked from the palace gardens. George had even tried to copy the words from one of his history books, "We love you, Granny Diana." Charlotte's note was simpler, "Miss you." Louis, too young for words, had added only a heart drawn in red crayon. It wasn't the majesty of the display that broke William and Catherine. It was its innocence. No cameras, no instructions. Just 3 children honoring a grandmother they had never met, but somehow deeply felt. William's knees nearly gave out as he stepped forward. His throat tightened, the memories rushing back with searing clarity. Diana's laugh, her hand in his, her voice telling him that kindness was stronger than tradition. And here, decades later, his children, without being told, were carrying her spirit forward. Catherine touched his arm, her tears falling freely now. She understood. She had watched William wrestle with the burden of his mother's absence, seen the way he sometimes grew quiet when George smiled just like Diana, or when Charlotte tilted her head with the same mischievous sparkle. This moment, created by their children's love, was more than remembrance. It was connection, across generations, across grief, across time. William bent down, his hand brushing Charlotte's drawing. His voice cracked when he whispered, "She would have loved this. She would have loved you." The children looked up, a little confused by their parents' tears, but George straightened and said softly, "We just wanted you to remember her today, because she's part of us too." Those words, spoken by a boy not yet old enough to grasp the full weight of legacy, hit William harder than any headline or speech ever could. Catherine knelt beside Louis, pressing a kiss to his hair, her heart aching with pride. For all the royal duties and expectations, this was the essence of their life. Raising children who knew love before duty, family before crown. For a long time, no one spoke. The room seemed to hold its breath, wrapping the family in a cocoon of silence. Outside, the palace remained its usual bustling world of advisors and courtiers. But inside, at that little table with a makeshift shrine, time stood still. Finally, William rose. His face was wet, but his voice was steady. He looked at Catherine, then at the children. "This," he said quietly, "is why we carry on." Not because of crowns or titles, but because of love, because of family. Catherine nodded, her hand finding his again. In her eyes was not only shared grief, but shared strength. They had faced storms together, endured scrutiny, and carried centuries of tradition. But here, in this simple act of remembrance, they were reminded that the truest measure of legacy isn't tea and gold or ceremony. It is in love that outlives us. The children smiled, sensing they had done something important, though not fully understanding how deeply it had touched their parents. George straightened Diana's photo, Charlotte adjusted her flowers, and Louis, giggling softly, placed his crayon heart right in the center. It was imperfect, it was messy, it was utterly human, and it was perfect. Later, when William and Catherine stepped back into the public eye, their faces bore the composure expected of royals, but behind that composure lived a private moment they would never forget. A door they had opened that morning, and the sight that had reminded them why love is stronger than tradition, and why the smallest hands often carry the greatest truths. That was the day William opened the door, and what he saw moved him and Kate to tears. A moment not for the cameras, but for the heart. And so behind the grandeur of Buckingham Palace we glimpse the truth. Even future kings and queens are just parents, just children, just people bound together by love and memory. William and Catherine's tears that morning weren't about loss alone. They were about connection, about realizing that Diana's legacy was alive and well in the laughter and innocence of their children. It's moments like these that remind us why we watch, why we care, and why the story of this family continues to move millions around the world. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit like, click subscribe, and share it with someone who believes in love stronger than tradition. Until next time, thank you for watching.